Imagine a palace of gold and marble, a king whose whisper could summon life or death, and a single young woman, an orphan with no throne, who stepped into the breach and changed history. This is the story of Esther, a queen who saved her people in the shadow of an empire. Stay with me. In the 5th century BCE, the Persian Empire stretched like a living map from India to Ethiopia. At its heart sat a royal court so vast that rumor and politics intertwined like rivers and reeds. Into this world of splendor and danger came Esther, a Jewish woman raised in exile, whose name would become the title of a festival and the hinge of a people's survival. This is not merely a tale of court intrigue. It is a study in courage, identity, and moral risk, a rare story where a quiet person becomes the instrument of deliverance. The biblical book of Esther locates its events in the reign of Ahasuerus, king of Persia. Many scholars equate Ahasuerus with Xerxes I, the same monarch who marched into Greece. Whether the parallels are exact, the story is set against the real backdrop of a cosmopolitan, multi-ethnic empire where local peoples lived under imperial rule, and where court decisions could have empire-wide consequences. The Jewish community lived scattered across the empire, established in Babylonian exile and allowed to remain under Persian rule. They enjoyed periods of peace, but their survival depended on the goodwill of rulers and the vagaries of court politics. Esther is introduced to us not as royalty but as an orphan. After the death of her father and mother, she is taken in by her cousin Mordecai, a man of quiet faith and firm character. The book of Esther gives no long biography, but between the lines we can reconstruct a life of resilience. Mordecai raises Esther in the Jewish faith, mindful of identity in exile, careful about heritage and rooted in values that will shape her choices. She grows up in the Persian capital, steeped in two worlds, the customs and grandeur of the court and the private traditions of her people. That duality, insider in the palace, outsider by birth, will be the decisive lever of her story. Ahasuerus, reigning in splendor, deposes his queen Vashti after she refuses a royal summons, an act that sets off a chain reaction. Seeking a new queen, the king's advisors organize a search across the empire. Young women brought to the palace to be groomed, prepared, and presented. It's an imperial beauty contest with eternity on the line. Esther, now known by the Persian name Hadassah, is selected among many for the king's consideration. The narrative emphasizes that Esther neither reveals her Jewish lineage nor seeks favor by intrigue. She wins the king's heart through a combination of dignity, wisdom, and the quiet force of character taught to her by Mordecai. When she becomes queen, it is without public knowledge of the people she belongs to. Enter Haman, a senior official elevated to a place of honor in the court. Mordecai, steadfast and unbowed, refuses to bow to Haman, not from petty pride, but because Haman's lineage or idolatrous demands conflict with his conscience. This refusal enrages Haman, but the personal wound becomes political. Haman convinces the king to issue a decree. A date is fixed when the Jews throughout the empire will be annihilated. He casts lots, per in the ancient tongue, to choose the day, and he secures royal authorization to execute genocide. The decree is sealed in the Persian fashion, written, stamped with the royal signet, and sent to every province. The Jewish community, learning of this, faces a legal death sentence. Imagine that, law turned into a weapon. The news reaches Mordecai, who tears his garments and goes into mourning, a public sign of grief. He sends word to Esther, urging her to intercede with the king. But Esther is in the delicate position of a queen who has not revealed her Jewish identity. Approaching the king unsummoned is a capital offense unless the king extends his golden scepter. Caught between loyalty to her people and the law of the court, Esther faces a private apocalypse. If she speaks, she risks her life. If she stays silent, millions die. Mordecai's reply to Esther is one of the story's deepest moral challenges. Do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the other Jews, for if you keep silence at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther's immediate reaction is not a speech but a fast. She calls for 3 days of prayer and fasting, not merely ritual, but a commitment that unites the community in an act of spiritual solidarity. It is an image of courage and dependence. Before she steps into the lion's den, she prepares by seeking strength and clarity. After the fast, with her heart pounding, she dons her royal robes and approaches the inner court. A single step. The king sees her. He extends the scepter. She lives. Esther has bought a second chance. Esther invites the king and Haman to 2 banquets. Suspense tightens. At the first feast she speaks with grace but not yet with accusation. Haman, swelling with pride, prepares to build a gallows for Mordecai. But that night, in a dramatic twist, the king cannot sleep and asks that the court records be read. He discovers that Mordecai once saved his life by exposing a plot. Haman is called in to commend Mordecai. But instead of honor, Haman's plot begins to unravel. At the second banquet, Esther reveals her Jewish identity and, with precision, moves the king's heart. She lays before him the decree of destruction and pleads for her people. The king, enraged but bound by Persian legal procedure, asks who would dare such a thing. Esther points to Haman. The king, in a fury, orders Haman to be punished. Ironically, Haman is hanged on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Where Haman sought to turn law into genocide, the story stages a reversal. The instruments of destruction become instruments of justice. But the Persian law is peculiar. A royal decree once issued and sealed cannot be simply rescinded. So the king grants Esther and Mordecai authority to issue a counter-decree, to permit the Jews to defend themselves. On the appointed day, communities that had been targeted instead successfully resist their attackers. To remember this deliverance, Mordecai and Esther established the festival of Purim, named for the lots Haman cast. It is a festival of reversal. Feasting, gift-giving to the poor, and public reading of the story. An annual memorial that transforms grief into communal joy and defiant remembrance. Scholars debate the historicity of the Book of Esther. Some see it as historical narrative, others as a novella shaped to teach theological and moral truths. Certain names, Ahasuerus, Haman, are debated in relation to Persian records. What is indisputable, however, is the story's power. It articulates how ordinary people, constrained by law and custom, might exercise moral imagination and political courage to save lives. Whether every detail is documentary or dramatic, Esther's story has functioned across centuries as a model for courage under threat and strategic, risky advocacy. Esther's courage is not theatrical heroism. It is composed of small decisions: keeping faith in exile, refusing to betray identity, fasting with her people, and breaking protocol to risk everything on a single plea. Her bravery is strategic. She frames her plea at a banquet, secures witnesses, and uses the mechanisms of the court to rescue her people. That combination of humility, faith, and political savvy makes her a timeless exemplar. Today, Esther's story echoes wherever people face marginalization and legal oppression. It asks us, when institutions fail, what moral imagination will we bring? When sacrifice is required, who will step forward? The story invites us to remember, law can be used for evil or for justice, and individuals, even those with no official power, sometimes become the fulcrum of salvation. If Esther's courage moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who loves history and faith, and subscribe for more documentary-style narratives from sacred and public stories. Tell us in the comments, which moment in Esther's story struck you most? Her fast, her risk at the king's court, or the reversal of Haman? We'll feature the best comments in our next episode.